Assistive Technology in the Reading Clinic, Its Emerging Potential. Written by Michael C. McKenna and Sharon Walpole in the Reading Research Quarterly. Presented by Judy Nair, assisted by Mr. Moose and Sammy. And now let's join Mr. Moose in the Reading Clinic. Hello, Mr. Moose.
Hello!
At his clinic, Mr. Moose tries to find out the best way to help Sammy Slugger, a little bear who has some struggles with reading.
Sammy, where are you?
Here I am, Mr. Moose.
So, Sammy, how's the reading going?
Gee, Mr. Moose, I don't know. The kids just make fun of me because even though I've been trying to really hard all this time, I just don't get it. Can you help me? Please, please.
I'll do my best, Sammy. I have a note here from your teacher telling me all of the things she has already tried. Wow, she has tried quite a few learning strategies, even the newest ones.
Maybe you have trouble decoding, Sammy. Well, I have my special decoder ring. Too bad I don't get that either.
Ha ha ha, Sammy. Let's see what we can think of in the technology world that might be able to help you.
Do you mean like computers?
Yes, maybe there is a strategy that would help you. Is your problem that you can't see?
No, I can see fine. I'm a baseball player, you know, and I can really zoom around those bases.
Then you probably don't need a text-to-speech program.
Well, how about spelling? I can spell checkers.
I know how to play checkers too. Ha ha.
Ugh, Mr. Moose.
Well, what do you think your problem is?
What? I wasn't paying attention. A spider went by and I had to watch it, and I heard a siren and maybe a gunshot. I don't know.
Oh, I think I might know what your problem is. If only research had the answers for you in a convenient computer software program, then I could simply plug in facts and data about you and get help for you in that way. Sammy? Hey, Sammy! Where'd you go? We will rejoin Mr. Moose's reading clinic later. But for now, we want to talk about the article, Assistive Technology in the Reading Clinic, Its Emerging Potential. In our experience, traditional reading clinics, whose mission it is to serve struggling readers through comprehensive individually administered assessment and individually tailored one-on-one instruction, have been slow to embrace the potential of technology. Instead, technology applications in literacy instruction appear to have been far more commonly implemented in special education settings and far more commonly investigated by literacy researchers whose agendas do not focus on struggling readers. We believe this situation is unfortunate. This is the authors talking. And I agree. Developments within assistive technology, not to mention policy-driven reality, suggest that clinical practice be reconsidered in light of emerging applications if clinics are to serve struggling readers optimally, and if ultimately clinics are to thrive in a digital era. Clinics remain a vehicle useful in reaching nuanced judgments about reading difficulties, offering detailed guidance to practitioners, and pioneering new methods of assessment. We suspect that assistive technology holds exceptional promise for achieving those ends. Our purpose here is to first sharpen the definition of AT in clinical settings, to describe how theory and available research supports its use in clinics, to link AT in clinics to AT in schools, and finally, to identify questions for further inquiry. The U.S. federal definition of assistive technology is any item, piece of equipment, or product system, whether acquired commercially off the shelf, modified, or customized, that is used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities of a child with a disability. And that is written in the Individuals with Disabilities Act Amendments 2004. In this broader view, assistive technology extends beyond the level of supported text in which aids such as digitalized pronunciation, American Sign Language pop-ups, and glossary entries are made available by pointing and clicking. Clinicians must be responsible for evaluating the available research evidence before considering an application. Unfortunately, the research evidence is limited and sometimes conflicting. Consider three of the most common AT applications in literacy. First, text-to-speech technologies may be appropriate for improving the comprehension of below-average and reading-disabled readers, but they offer little help to individuals with attention deficit disorder, like our friend Sammy. Likewise, speech recognition has long suffered from inaccurate word matches that limit its role in AT. But Adams in 2006 reported technological advances that appear to be poised to overcome these difficulties. A third example involves the frequent suggestion that students with severe spelling problems use spell checkers, like our friend Sammy. Research on AT applications at present offers clinicians useful but tentative hunches about what course to follow with a particular child. Their charge is to document the effectiveness of a specific AT for an individual, a task for which the clinical setting is well suited. Given the range of available AT applications, a tailored package may be developed through a process of exposing the child to various combinations of digital resources. No doubt, a helpful tool for future clinical applications would be a software system offering a menu of AT configurations to help determine in a systematic way the most productive combination for a given child. Now that is what Mr. Moose was hoping for in his clinic, wasn't he? Well, he was. Now, of particular note is the potential of technology to help a reader compensate for skill deficits without actually overcoming those deficits. We do not embrace clinical fitting of AT to compensate for specific reading deficits as a substitute for instructional interventions, whether they involve technology or not, to address those deficits. Now let's discuss a research agenda. What we've discussed thus far are the potential uses for AT in clinical settings. However, we don't know of any reading clinic that employs all of them. Although many reasons may underlie reluctance to embrace AT, surely one of them is the inadequate research base to guide in clinical use. Until an adequate foundation of evidence becomes available, we cannot reasonably accept AT applications to flourish in the clinic. So we need proof before we just jump in and use something. That's responsibility. Okay. Edie Byrne has used the phrase cognitive prosthesis to describe AT applications in reading. This metaphor is no doubt apt to the degree that reading performance is enhanced when readers have AT available. His time series approach proposes, at least in the near term, that reading with the help of AT will exceed an individual's performance in its absence. But these projections lead us to hypothesize that a struggling reader will gradually approach the point at which the AT application is no longer needed, barring, of course, cases where a precondition prevents the learner from making progress without the AT, for instance with the visually impaired, who will always need that assistance. Specifically, we might predict that the gap between performance with and without the application would eventually begin to narrow, perhaps to the point of insignificance. If such a trend were substantiated, then AT might be better viewed as a scaffold, removable when the individual no longer needs it, rather than a permanent prosthesis. Now, let's see here. What am I doing now? AT versus intervention. Well, what if, on the other hand, a steady diet of reading with AT failed to help an individual mature to the point where the assistants were no longer needed? In that case, the prosthetic function might still boost performance, but it would need to be available indefinitely. Rapp in 2005 suggested that a different metaphor in raising the possibility that AT applications may aid individuals in undertaking complex literacy tasks without actually increasing individual skills. In this case, AT provides a crutch, and that crutch is potentially negative, and it could delay or even prevent an individual from building the underlying skills that are needed. So we don't want to have a crutch. We want to have scaffolding. Scaffolding is better, because then it can be removed and the child has actually learned something. Now, clinicians who are inexpert at the use of AT applications may require specific training if the potential of AT is to be realized. And there are some researchers that observed that clinicians often proceeded without clear reading or literacy objectives when using computer-based instruction. Research into the professional development needed to implement AT in clinical settings is therefore required, not to mention not just clinicians, but also professional development for teachers as well. Just as important are qualitative investigations into how AT applications are best integrated into classroom settings. And teachers, like clinicians, may attempt to implement recommended AT without a clear notion of outcomes. In fact, the additional demands on teachers' time and attention make successful implementation far less likely. A good clinician does not make recommendations that are impossible to implement in a classroom. Clinical recommendations then must be sensitive to the realities of the child's classroom world. The question for the clinician becomes more specific. How can AT help this child advance in reading skills given the time, texts, tasks, and grouping configurations that are available in the classroom? And what direct support can the clinician provide the classroom teacher to build AT into the classroom infrastructure as a permanent, flexible fixture? Perhaps as we begin to answer these questions, we will be able to leverage publishers to design curriculum materials that include AT access for all, integrated with overall planning for teaching and learning. This article is very informative regarding the issues surrounding the use of assistive technology. Though it was written from the clinic point of view, I could easily see implications for classroom teachers. First of all, a classroom teacher needs to take the clinic's recommendations into account when planning the Struggling Readers program at school. And secondly, the classroom teacher faces the same need of needing how to use AT effectively, not only for struggling readers, but for all the students. This is a great field to research right now because of the needs of the students and the potential of assistive technology to help. And we would like to help all students like Sammy to figure out how to read much better so that they can become star students.